Joe Lieberman came out of the woodworks to oppose the Iran deal here, and unsurprisingly, he's going to get everything dead wrong.
I was there when we adopted the economic sanctions against Iran, overwhelming bipartisan majorities, and the whole intention was come to a negotiation, not a war, diplomacy, and the deal is we end the sanctions against Iran and they end their nuclear program. The result
That's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting $150 billion. $150 billion.
And what happened was the opposite. We end the sanctions, they get $150 billion and a legalized path to become a nuclear power.
And are you saying to them also that one day you may have blood on your hands and you want the people to see who you are right now?
Well, I'm saying to people, yeah, absolutely. I'm saying to people, this is one of the most, I voted for a lot of treaties in my 24 years in the Senate. I don't think any was as consequential to the security of the American people as this agreement.
He said, yes, people who vote for this deal have blood on their hands. That's what he said. People who are for the Iran nuclear deal have blood on their hands. You know who has blood on their hands, Joe? You do. I'm not just saying that either, and that's not just my opinion. You voted for the Iraq War. You were for it all along. And you have the nerve to say to people who are supporting, ready for this? Peace. The people who are supporting peace, which is the opposite of bloodshed, they have blood on their hands. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But here's a guy who all along, remember, he was a Democrat. Yay! George Bush and Dick Cheney! Yay! What happened as a result of your dumbass Iraq war? And your judgment was 100% incorrect then. Why would I trust it now? You know, this reminds me a lot of the neocons like Bill Kristol. This is a guy who made a prediction about everything, was wrong about everything, and then he comes out today and says, nobody could support the Iran deal. It's crazy to support it. As Bill Maher said, I think you can sit this one out, Nostradamus. These are the same people who said we're going to be greeted as liberators in Iraq. The oil's going to pay for the war. You know, you name it. There's 12, 13 different statements they made that were totally untrue. It's going to take a few months. We'll be in and out. How many years later? We're still there. Come on. You don't know anything. What will it take for a guy like Joe Lieberman or a guy like Bill Kristol to admit, not only was I wrong, I was wrong at the heart and the core of the issue. I was wrong about everything in this respect. Middle East, I don't get it. I suck there. Now they're coming out saying people who support the Iran deal, blood on their hands. And then notice how he worded the first part of that. Because this is what makes people like me go fucking crazy and makes me want to hit my head against a wall, quite literally. He said, well, the whole purpose of the sanctions, we're supposed to do the sanctions, then come to a negotiation, have diplomacy, and then we end the sanctions, and they end their nuclear program. He said that's how it was supposed to work. Joe, that's how it did work, and you still oppose it. You want me to repeat it? He said, do the sanctions, come to a negotiation, do diplomacy, end the sanctions, and they end the nuclear program. That's exactly what happened. We had sanctions, then we did a negotiation, then we had diplomacy, then we ended the sanctions, over time, to be clear, and then they ended the nuclear program. Now, how does he weasel his way out of this? To try to say, oh, you have it wrong. What he says is, well, they didn't get rid of every single nuclear facility. But what he's omitting is they're only allowed to use nuclear research for scientific purposes. They're only allowed to enrich uranium for scientific purposes and for power for their power grid. And there's a big difference between being able to enrich to that point and being able to enrich to get a nuclear bomb. In fact, because of this deal, they're now more than 10 years away, even if they wanted to create a nuclear bomb. So the deal makes us safer. Without the deal, they'd be months away from being able to make it. But in his mind, he says, I want them to have nothing. But Joe, you're even disregarding what it says under international law. Under international law, you're allowed to have nuclear power for your power grid. But he says, I don't care. I want to violate it and force them to give away that, even though it's a right they have under international law. But even then, what's the fact of the matter here? Even then, he would still be opposed to the deal. Even if Iran said, we don't even want nuclear power for our power grid and scientific research. He said, I don't care. I'm against it. Why? Because they're against diplomacy as a matter of principle. In other words, all they know is force, and they always say that about the other side when that's what they are. So they'll say about Iran, these guys are violent savages. All they know is force. Meanwhile, Iran signed on to the peace deal. They agreed to it. You, on the other hand, are opposing it. So you would be the one, by virtue of your actions, that's saying, I'm the one that really understands nothing but force.